Hello, I'm Esme Thompson, and I'm welcoming you to my for an Ava studio tour to my studio in Lebanon, New Hampshire. So come on in, I'll show you what's going on in the studio. So I am getting ready for my show at Ava, and I created a piece that was interactive on the walls of the Weinberg Gallery space. So this is the main wall, which is meant to reflect the color of midday. First of all, I want to just lay out what my concerns are in painting. They have evolved into an intense interest in the elaboration of the surface through pattern. As you can see in a lot of these pieces, a kind of mark and pattern, kind of drawing line and pattern. The desire to create a kind of visual journey in a work. So I responded a lot to the space of the Weinberg Gallery at Ava with the thought that I could create a large piece where the parts were interactive, and after I thought about it for a while, I thought, well, I could break it down into four sections that would be related to the different times of day. So there's one wall that's the early morning, the wall behind me, which is daytime, then a wall that's twilight, and a wall that's night. And so the colors are grouped together to give the experience of that, whereas the parts and the shapes are interconnected through the whole piece. So you can find repeated compositions and repeated patterns. And the meaning of this for me is that somehow a viewer will come in and get involved in not just taking one look at a piece, but going back and forth through the painting to find the interconnections. So these pieces that I'm showing at Ava are kind of a recent development over the last couple of years. I used to work on metal panels that became a multi-panel wall relief, but now I work on plywood, eighth or quarter inch plywood that I cut on a bandsaw down in my workshop at home, and then I glue these pieces together to have a sense of a relief instead of just a flat surface, and I hang them on the wall. So this is a basic kind of construction of a piece that I'm working on now. I have to tell you, I had a spectacular learning curve with the bandsaw and learning how to glue and sand and make these things work. I have a scroll saw and a sander, and my partner Andy Dobbins-Beck has helped me with the many blades that I break as I work on these pieces. The pieces are topographic rather than just flat, and so because I work so much with pattern, I like the sense of creating a space with the pattern moving across the surface and a space that physically moves out off the surface. So what you see behind me are two paintings, one other titled Heliotrope 3 and 4. And as you can see, there's a sense of winding and weaving and curling of one shape into another, and one color into another, and things will appear and reappear in the painting, in the show you will see that I have a lot of embroideries that I do, and one of the things I've thought about is the embroideries which I sew from the composition of the paintings have kind of slowed me down and made me think about each mark and each zone as a color change, as a nuance. So I think in the more recent pieces, you'll see a kind of modulation of color that's more evolving in the work right now. The subtle shifts along up to an edge, and the way one color will reappear and knit, sew the rest of the piece together. So that's kind of tessellation of color has become really important. Tessellation of pattern, tessellation of color is really important to me in my work. And saw these two pieces, Helianthus, but this one is Narcissus. What I want to say about, it's crooked, I say about the paintings are the titles for the paintings come in the process of the painting. They don't come necessarily with an idea I have before, except for the color palette. So with this one, it's got the sense of the reflection of a repetition of top and bottom. So that's where the title of Narcissus came from the Greek myth. The other thing you can see in this particular piece is I have the sense of trying to suggest or imply a figure in the piece, but not in a very literal way. So in some of them, like the piece of Conversation on the yellow wall, you'll see this sort of very simplified silhouette. And obviously, I've looked a lot at the work of Picasso and the Japanese printmaker Kunisada in terms of interlocking figures or interactive, abstract figurative shapes. This piece is Strävad, which, if I'm probably not pronouncing it right, but in Swedish means to wander aimlessly. I felt like this piece was kind of wandering up and off the wall, and you'll see it repeated, that form repeated in several other places in the installation, but I like the way a certain kind of ripple or movement could just continue and weave through the piece and move out. You can see it in this piece too, something I really like to do. Thinking of the space of the painting not as a literal space, but a space that's created by across the plane of the painting, by interactions of the pattern. And two on the outside, on the upper part of the piece are they are reactions to my studies of Braque over the years. I've worked a lot from Braque, doing direct copies of his work. And when we turn, I'll show you some of the little studies I've done. Then one painting from another painting, and then another painting from the second painting, and gradually kind of extracting the shape and the space that I love in the piece. So in both of these, there's this sense of everything kind of wrapping around and enclosing everything else, and I really got interested in that in Braque. I don't know if you could really see Braque in these paintings or not. The rest of the studio is really not going to be as nicely put together as what you've seen, but it's just a studio space. For example, this is a wall. This wall I'm working on. When you see the tape, I'm working on figuring out how to hang these pieces at Ava, so I know exactly where they hang and the spaces between them. And I've got two more panels that are going to go up on this outside wall, on the upper layer of the wall, so you can see there'll be another double layer of piece. Yeah, and this one, you'll see in the wall, the gallery, there's an embroidery from this piece. And then this is the palette table, and all along the walls up there you can see the studies from Braque. So he's had a big influence on my work. Something about the way he structured space in his painting. It's not literally what I do in my work, but really interests me, even to the point of where he'll suggest a figure, but not put a literal figure in. And influences, there's a Persian miniature. I look a lot at Persian miniature art and Japanese art. And then this wall is the wall for the morning section of the show. And all the pieces are there, but the tape is just there because I'm figuring out how far apart and how to hang things and exactly where they go in relationship to each other. So this piece is called Trio, And that one is conversation. You know, it doesn't have literal figures in it, but it felt to me like there was some kind of interaction between two different entities. And I'm very interested in cartoons and the graphic quality of line and cartooning. And obviously one of my teachers was Elizabeth Murray, so she was very interested in the graphic cartooning too, so we can see that impact. I don't know what else to show you except clutter and bubble wrap, but I did want to talk a little bit at the end about my interest in craft. For many years I've had a growing interest in craft in my work. I've been fortunate enough to have my friend Liz Quackenbush let me work in her studio and come to some understanding of pattern and majolica and ceramics. And I think artists in the craft and pattern movement of the 70s were interested in incorporating more cultural influences in their work and breaking down the barrier between fine art and the everyday art. And that's really, I really am drawn to the way people decorate their homes in many different cultures. When they have very little, they'll do wonderful things to put decoration in their house. So I'm going to close with a quote from Heresy's magazine, which is a magazine from the 70s. At its best, decoration is the coming together of painting, sculpture, architecture, and the applied art. Decoration humanizes our living working spaces. It connects us with the ancient and world-wide traditions and crafts. Decoration abolishes hierarchical distinctions between high and low art. It's not elitist, and it does not condescend. It will expand our notion of the artist and the art audience. So thank you for visiting my studio today, and I hope to see you at the show at Ava Gallery.